I'm Kitty, and this podcast is mine, Missing, Murdered, Unidentified in New England. Join me as we delve into cases from Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont between January 2010 and December 2020. Episodes vary in length due to available information. All research, opinions, and errors are my own, with updates and corrections provided when possible. Trigger warnings will be given for sensitive topics like suicide, animal death, and domestic violence. Wound descriptions are integral to the narrative and won't be trigger warned. Now with that, please join me as I tell you about June 2014. June 4th, 2014. Darrell Greasy Jenkins Jr. was prepping to be the pallbearer at his great-grandmother's funeral and had two daughters named Tanaja and Michaela. Tanaja calls their dad, Darrell. June 4th, 2014. Darrell Greasy Jenkins Jr. was prepping to be the pallbearer at his great-grandmother's funeral and had two daughters, one named Tanaja and the other Michaela. Tanaja recalls their dad and has memories of him, while Michaela has to rely on the stories and anecdotes of their slain father to get a picture of who he was in his short lifetime. At 12:38 a.m. on June 4th, 2014, somebody shot 23-year-old Darrell to death in front of his home at Kensington Avenue in Springfield, Massachusetts, in the Forest Park neighborhood. "This is a retiree neighborhood," a 63-year-old said. "No drug houses, no crack houses. I mean, everyone has fun here." Different sources claim that Darrell was walking home, while others said he was already in front of his house when shots were fired at Darrell and his friend and/or cousin. There were the shots that killed Darrell, striking him in the head and thigh, and the shots that struck his close friend or cousin, including a bullet wound to her mouth. Darrell died almost immediately, while his friend was able to run 4 blocks down to Pasadena and White Streets before collapsing unconscious to the ground. Luckily, the unnamed 20-year-old woman survived her wounds. Darrell's murder is likely gang retaliation for the merciless shooting death of 18-year-old Lenezia Clark, no relation to Tamara Clark. Police do not think that Darrell's murder is likely gang retaliation for the merciless shooting death of 18-year-old Lenezia Clark, no relation to Tamara Clark. Police do not think that Darrell was part of any gang activity, though, and neither was the young woman who was maimed that same night. Darrell's mom, Juanita Batchelor, moved away from their shared home shortly after Darrell's murder, but the bullet hole scars remained on the house for years afterward. In the aftermath of Darrell's murder, the lack of counseling resources were hard on the family, as well as the lack of community support groups made their life harder on the already grieving family. The Family Advocacy Center on Maple Street did have grief counselors to assist, and though kind and professional, the family thought that because they were predominantly white, they felt as though the understanding of the situation and the heaviness of it was lost on them. And they lacked understanding that only losing a loved one through violent circumstances can cause. In light of Darrell's murder and the lack of resources, Juanita created MORE, Mother Overlooked Reaching Out Empowerment, who provides support for families of homicide victims and missing persons, and going to deal with police and make court appearances, identifying resources for children and grandchildren, and, most importantly, they show empathy. In another sad turn of events, Darrell's cousin Tamara Clark was violently killed on June 24th, 2020, while driving through Holyoke, Mass. Tamara had pulled over to say hi to a friend and was shot and killed. Please call 1-855-MA-SOLVE or 1-413-787-6355 with any information leading to the apprehension of Darrell Jenkins Jr.'s murderer. June 4th, 2014. The next case is that of the Man of the Dunes, or the Barnstable County, Massachusetts John Doe, who was discovered at Town Neck Beach in Sandwich, Mass. This story begins around 8 p.m. on June 4th, 2014, when a young man and his friend Brett Civelli were walking along the beach and saw a mysterious package just behind the Jersey barrier, which is the large concrete barriers at the beach. There was a duffel bag wrapped in a tarp, and inside of that package was the headless, limbless torso of an unidentified black male, likely an adolescent to late adulthood. The body was of West African descent with dark eyes, dark skin, no freckles, which comes from a Parabon Nanolabs test of the deceased man's DNA. The age of the man was unable to be determined due to the state of the torso, as the man's body had been badly mutilated in order to hide the identity. The man was thought to be between 5'8" and 6 feet and 220 to 240 pounds. The man had been in good health and was not overly muscular. The only sign of health concern was a 3 to 4 inch scar on the man's abdomen, likely from a hernia surgery or appendectomy, and no other abnormalities were discovered and no other injuries. The deceased had been dead for days prior to the discovery and had been dumped 24 to 48 hours beforehand, so about June 2nd, 2014. No cause of death was discovered, but the wounds to the torso could result in blood loss and potentially death. Due to this amount of blood and none being found at the scene, police concluded that the beach was a secondary crime scene. The torso was wrapped in 4 to 5 layers of plastic and then clothing, and then duct taped to the dolly. The man was reading. The torso was wrapped in 4 to 5 layers of plastic and then of clothing, and then duct taped to the dolly. The man was wearing a t-shirt that said, quote, "I got serviced," with several logos on the back. The shirt came from a pipe distribution company in Cranston, Rhode Island, and had been distributed 6 to 8 years beforehand, and to a large group of people, according to Windustrial, one employer featured on the shirt. Cranston Windustrial Company specializes in industrial-size fire suspension systems for big buildings. The other clothing on the body included several layers, Echo black sweatpants, a Gazy t-shirt, sized 4XL, Fruit of the Loom, size XL, white shirt, and The other clothing on the body included several layers, including Echo black sweatpants, a Gazy t-shirt sized 4XL, Fruit of the Loom white shirt sized XL, and a pair of 3XL Hanes boxers. There was a blue dolly with black wheels that was collapsible for easy moving with a strap to hold the torso in place. The head was not recovered, neither were the limbs. No surveillance was discovered in the nearby homes that were of use. Criminologist and sociology professor Jack Levin chimed in and said that the use of the dolly is a singular, well-thought-out and organized killer with either military, butchery, or hunting experience, because the average person could not handle that level of blood and gore. This theory led police to think that Barnstable County Doe knew their killer. Police also think that the Rhode Island shirt on the Barnstable County Doe was a red herring, and that they should be focusing their searches on everywhere but Rhode Island. The supposed reasoning behind dumping the body is that there was either a heroin overdose and disposal, which I think is far-fetched as they are an unfortunate everyday occurrence, and the other was that the murder had to do with human trafficking, which I think is unfortunately more likely. Another murder that locals brought up in relation to this unsolved case is that of a man named Dennis Ray Jackson, who was murdered on November 14th, 2013. Dennis was a Haverhill, Massachusetts father of 3 who was a roofer, a drug dealer, and a domestic abuser. Dennis's limbs were found in a burning barrel on the premises of the Bridgewater Psychiatric Hospital, while Dennis's torso was found in Hyde Park, Massachusetts. Dennis's case took place about 30 minutes away from where the Barnstable County Doe was discovered. Months later, Reginald Cummings, known to police for drugs and gang ties, was arrested. Dennis knew Reginald through a mutual connection through Paris Cormier of Salisbury, Mass. Via Crime Squad for Life 319. The only charge that could be brought up was the improper disposal of a corpse, and accessory to murder after the fact. Reginald fled to San Diego, California, went to Mexico where he couldn't be extradited, and came back home in 2013 and was then sentenced to 3 years in prison. Police determined that the Barnstable County Doe was not murdered by the gang nor disposed by them. The unfortunate case of Carrie Mello has also been tied to Barnstable County Doe by circumstances that are too great to say they are coincidental, but not strong enough to tie them together. Carrie Mello was 1 hour 5 minutes away from Barnstable County Doe. The manner of death is the same, as well as the tie to Cranston, Rhode Island, although that has been mostly discredited by educators. The murder of Carrie Mello and Barnstable County Doe took place a year apart. Carrie Mello vanished on August 10, 2015, was quickly reported missing. Multiple states and police departments were involved in the search. Tragically, 9 days later, on August 23, 2015, as a fishing vessel was trolling the waters in Westport, Massachusetts, they pulled aboard Carrie's dismembered body, wrapped in a tarp and a bag, and Carrie's legs washed ashore at Goose Wing Beach in Little Compton, Rhode Island, days later. In Compton, Rhode Island, days later. In October 2015, Carrie's car was discovered in Boston, Mass., and search warrants were issued on Berea Farm in Warwick, Rhode Island, which is a town over from Cranston. In the end, 3 men were arrested and convicted of luring, murder, and dismemberment of Carrie. Those men were Jamie Barrera, Albert Barrera, and Louis Jermia. The motives of these men came from a vendetta over missing marijuana and money. Reddit is responsible for linking Carrie Mello to Barnstable County Doe. Quote, "Just weeks after the discovery, the town had a clam bake, cooking food in the sand, quite close to where the remains were found. Wasn't appetizing. Please call 1-508-790-5799 or 1-855-MA-SOLVE with any information." June 6, 2014. Rest in peace, my love. Not a day or night goes by that you are not thought of and missed. A newspaper article can never summarize the man we knew you to be. Honest, hardworking, funny, determined, and kind. Me and the few who truly knew you were blessed to have you in our lives. A coward dies 1,000 deaths, a soldier but one. You had more honor and pride than most, and a heart of gold. I love you now and always. Rachel. Michael DePina was born on February 28, 1985, and was the brother to anti-violence advocate Joao DePina, a young father to a son named Jordan, and was listed as 28, 29, and 35, depending on the source. Michael was a resident of Quincy, Massachusetts, with his longtime girlfriend, was the owner and operator of his own landscaping business, and loved to work with his hands, once rebuilding a motorcycle over the course of an evening. Joao DePina issued a call on Sunday for better mental health care for disadvantaged youth, particularly those who are in the custody of the state child welfare. Joao DePina issued a call on Sunday for better mental health care for disadvantaged youth, particularly those who are in the custody of the state child welfare agency, as he and his brother were growing up. There had been trouble in the past, struggles with mental health issues in the court system. Those troubles, though, they did not define Michael. At roughly 8:45 p.m. on June 6, 2014, Michael was discovered laying next to a motorcycle at 5 Taft Street near Dorchester Ave, a part of St. Margaret's area of Dorchester. At first, Michael's death was thought to be a motorcycle accident, although 2 guns were located nearby. It turns out, though, that Michael was riding his motorcycle. Someone shot him in the back of the head, and he crashed his motorcycle into the parked Toyota minivan nearby. As a result, the visor on Michael's helmet was shattered, and there was blood near his head, according to witnesses. A witness saw Michael, asked if it was him, but the only response was a noise. No words were uttered. Taft Street went into lockdown after Michael was murdered, and residents weren't allowed to leave their homes as police canvassed the area looking for eyewitnesses and the potential shooter. Quote, "I don't want to be naive and say my brother was an angel. I don't know what he was into. But what I do know is that no one deserves to die like that," said Joao DePina. Michael DePina was murdered in the streets of Dorchester, and we still have no answers. And the DA's office is still not doing that because she is very turned into locking black and brown men up for petty crimes, and that is what's going on. Yeah. According to a quote online. 2 days after Michael's murder, the following quote was posted online. "The Cape Verdean violence continues. Another Wendover associate murdered this year. His brother Joao was the anti-crime activist, and he unfortunately couldn't convince his brother or brothers to follow his path. Sadly, more bloodshed will follow as Michael was well known among his associates." End quote. Other sources think that Michael's murder was the end to a rivalry of shootings. The national conversation on gun violence often includes mental health, but usually in the context of preventing the next mass shooting, not in ameliorating the daily struggles and stressors that are exacerbated in crowded, impoverished neighborhoods. Joao DePina, for example, believes that his brother Michael DePina would be alive if better mental health interventions were available. It is clear that the Cape Verdean mental health crisis was partly to blame for the violence that surrounded Michael, as he had been in foster care at a young age and had placed anger and animosity as he couldn't control those things. Please call 1-800-494-TIPS with any information. June 17th, 2014. The remains of an unidentified Latino male were discovered in Boston, Massachusetts. The man was 5'4", 110 pounds, and about 40 to 50 years of age. The man had been deceased for days, and putrefaction and decomposition were present. The man had short, dark, medium-length hair, had a mustache and beard, and was wearing one gray pant, one green pant, a black shirt, one tan boot, one gray sweater. No other information is available. Please call 1-800-494-TIPS with any information. June 20th, 2014. Trigger warning, suicide. Milton Russell Eldridge was a 5'9" to 5'10", 190 to 200 pound white male with long, curly, strawberry blonde hair, blue eyes. Milton had a crescent moon tattoo on his left wrist, surrounded by 3 to 5 stars, and was reported missing on June 20th, 2014, from Blandford, Massachusetts. But it wasn't until later, when Milton's skull was located, that his story received some closure. Prior to vanishing, Milton was living on Herrick Road in Blandford, Mass., and was a resident of Northampton, Massachusetts prior to that. According to the GoFundMe page about Milton, quote, "Milton Eldridge was a great guy. He went missing 5 years ago, and his family and friends had been left in limbo, not knowing what happened. Remains have now been discovered, and while there are still questions, his family and friends can now at least say goodbye. Can at least now have the goodbye we've all wanted, and a remembrance that he deserves. But I guess we have to pay for it. And that's where this comes in. All money will go to his cremation, his party, and what's left will go to the dogs, because that's what he would have wanted. Donations to shelters, hopefully a dog play structure at a dog park if we can. Something we can put his name on. For doggies to pee on? Lol. Anything anyone can manage will be greatly appreciated, but the holidays are coming up, so don't feel pressured." The GoFundMe page that was set up by Jason Eldridge managed to raise $41.90 out of $5,000. In celebration of Milton, quote, "A small group of his friends and family got together, fumbled around in the woods until the hunter just a kid to my dismay, 16, that discovered his skull showed up and pointed us in the right direction of where to go to, quote, say our goodbyes. Fireworks may or may not have been involved. In the end, that's both literally and figuratively what happened, as we were all just stumbling around until now, and now shit is blowing up. The kid seemed perfectly fine with the situation, and a real hats off to him to actually come out there to help us show amazing character. To actually come out there to help us shows amazing character. What a way to celebrate a life as large as Milton's. According to Karen Buczynski, a longtime friend and sweetheart to Milton, she said that I was robbed. We were so in love. We were so adorable together. We were really in love. In the late 80s, we lived together all throughout the 90s. In the late 80s, and we lived together all throughout the 90s. And then we broke up, and I waited for him for 14 years. And then he came back to this house. Karen suspects that Milton took his own life in 2014. She recalls his bouts with depression. Although he was a certified EMT, the 59-year-old earned his living delivering furniture. He had children from a marriage before he met Karen. She said her heart breaks when she thinks of all those years that have passed since 2014. If you or someone you know is dealing with thoughts of suicide or are in a personal crisis, please call 988. You are not alone. There are people who care and people will help. If you have any information as to the whereabouts of If you have any information about this case, please reach out to 1-800-494-TIPS. June 21st, 2014. Sarah and Yasmin Faridi are missing. They were likely taken by non-custodial family members. Sarah Faridi was 3, is now 13, is white, and was last seen at 1'8" to 3'4", 27 to 47 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. Yasmin Faridi was 5, now 15, was 3'2" to 4'8", and 27 to 43 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes when last seen. Please call 1-212-384-2921 with any information. June 22nd, 2014. Michael Anthony Lanier II was from Everett, Massachusetts. Michael was the son of Michael Anthony Lanier and Barbara M. Owens, and was the brother of Louis Lanier. Michael was engaged to a lovely woman named Brittany Turner, and was the father to Mackay Lanier, Madison Cole, and Jovan Johnson. Michael worked for Rent-A-Center store chain and was a 2008 Everett High School graduate. In the early morning hours of June 22, 2014, Michael Lanier was shot at 1:47 a.m. along with a friend and taken to Brigham and Women's Hospital on Eggleston Square. This shooting occurred near School and Arcadia Streets and 6 to 8 Ernst Street in Jamaica Plains, Massachusetts. The unnamed friend survived, while Michael succumbed to his wounds. Michael is buried at Cambridge Cemetery, and contrary to popular rumor, Michael was not, in fact, killed by police in the commission of a crime. Please call 1-800-494-8477 with any information. The following poem was written in response to Michael's murder. What do we do? By Speaking Out There Here. By Speaking Out There. On Monday, June 23, 2014 at 4:24 p.m. Angry people, desperate people, unstable people, using guns, robbing, carjacking, wounding, maiming, killing, madness, sadness, pain. Tears, questions, fears, anger, frustration. What do we do to stop this madness? June 29th, 2014. Walter Cook Jr. was a 38-year-old Hispanic man from a safe neighborhood in East Boston, Massachusetts. On the day of June 29th, 2014, someone really wanted Walter dead, in an attack that was likely planned and not random. Walter's murderer climbed up the fire escape at the 232 Brandywine Drive apartment before smashing in the window and shooting Walter multiple times. Walter was discovered on the floor. Walter's killer is still unidentified, as his friends say that he was a generally friendly and neighborly person with no known enemies. Walter was described as just so sweet, and that same friend said that their heart was completely broken over Walter's murder. Please call 1-800-494-8477 with any information. June 30th, 2014. Corey Ragland was a 36-year-old Mattapan, Massachusetts resident who was shot and killed in East Boston, Mass. at 2:07 p.m. on June 30th, 2014. At 73 Edgewater Drive, Hyde Park, Massachusetts, someone shot Corey multiple times between Malta and Toppalion Streets in Hyde Park. An unidentified minivan was seen leaving the murder. Please call 1-800-494-8477 with any information.